So I've been receiving some messages and emails and reading some threads online about people feeling bad or sorry about moving to Hawaii, or they're thinking about moving to Hawaii and they just feel really bad. And I have no idea where this is coming from. It may be because there's been some social media posts telling people to stay away from Hawaii, like don't move to Hawaii for all these various reasons. And while I respect that opinion, I hope that people who view those types of posts understand that not everyone in Hawaii, not everyone from Hawaii feels that same way. And so I just want to talk story as if we're friends here, and as a friend you are thinking about moving to Hawaii, and this is what I would say. No, you don't have to feel bad for moving to Hawaii. And just for introductions, in case you want to know who I am not native Hawaiian, but I am locally born and raised here, grew up here, graduated from high school here, went away to the mainland for college, lived there for a little while, then came back, got a job, bought a place, got married, started a family, and then started this YouTube channel. And so I want to talk about some reasons why I don't think people should feel bad moving to Hawaii. And again, not here to tell people how they should feel. I just hope that they understand that that one perspective is just not it, and that there are other perspectives from people who live in Hawaii. And I think it's important that people don't get confused when they just see that particular perspective and they think everyone from Hawaii is so unwelcoming. But just as those social media content creators don't speak for everyone in the state, I too also don't speak for everyone in Hawaii. These are just my opinions. So I got 3 reasons why you shouldn't feel bad if you're thinking about moving to Hawaii. The first is that you did nothing wrong. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. I have no idea where this emotional guilt comes from. I mean, it's not like you did something wrong. Like, it's not like you came to Hawaii and you took a rock or something, or you got into a fight. Usually guilt is associated with doing something wrong, right? Like it's our mind telling us that we did something wrong. Like, we know right and wrong, and we did wrong. And so that feeling of guilt, I think, is there because we know we did something wrong and we should do something to correct that. But in this case, there's people who feel this type of guilt who are gonna move to Hawaii, and I don't see them doing anything wrong personally. And again, maybe some local people might be thinking, oh man, you're betraying your own locals here. You're telling people to move here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, trying to encourage everybody to come to Hawaii, because again, if they came here, most of them would probably leave in about a year or two just because of how expensive it is and how challenging it is to live in Hawaii. And I would always encourage people that if they want to move here, that they really prepare and do their research, get a better understanding of what life in Hawaii is really like. And that's part of what my channel hopefully does for some people. And while I think it's good that people have sensitivity and a general understanding of what happened and transpired with some of Hawaii's history, I think it's also important to remember that Hawaii's history includes an immigration of people from all over the world. And that's what makes Hawaii so special. I mean, we saw huge groups come from Asia in particular, right? We have Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Filipino, and then you got Portuguese, and people from all over the place come to Hawaii. From those different groups, we pull our local culture together that is Hawaii today, our food, our language, our ways of life. And so in understanding that that's Hawaii's history, I think it's kind of a dangerous place to all of a sudden be saying, no, you can't come anymore. We don't want people to come anymore. Oftentimes, I feel like that sentiment is sort of targeted towards people from the mainland, by the way, our fellow Americans. But there's also people coming in from Asia as well. And they're coming from China, they're coming from the Philippines, from Japan. And what about those people? I don't think there's that much attention given to those people, but more so towards the people coming from the mainland. And it may be a thing about income inequality, right? Like, we have this maybe general idea that people from the mainland are coming and they have huge amounts of money and they're just buying up everything and pushing local people out, and maybe that's happening on a very small scale. So all that to say, I think it's really important to understand all of the history and to just be really careful about where you're getting that sense of guilt, particularly if you did nothing wrong yourself. Sorry, word cut here, but I want to mention that I think rather than spend so much energy and time worried about feeling guilty for something that you didn't really have anything to do with, I actually think it'd be a lot better if you spent that time maybe thinking of ways to make Hawaii a better place for everyone, including yourself and your family. And I think that type of thinking about ways, okay, this is how Hawaii may be, but what can I do to contribute to it? You know, like maybe not come in here and start changing things around, but just like, how do I fit in this place? How do I make it better for everyone and for future generations? And I think that's something that's worthwhile. Okay, going back. And so along with that, the second thing I hear a lot of people talking about is like all these problems, right? Like Hawaii has all these problems as a result of people moving in from other parts, like the mainland or from foreign countries, that they're just buying up everything, right? And I think it fails to acknowledge that in a lot of ways, Hawaii created its own successes, but it also created a lot of its own problems. And we have this wonderful image, right? Like we have the Hawaii brand that we market around the world as a very special place. We worked very hard for that brand, that image, right? But at the same time, Hawaii also created a lot of its own problems by focusing so much of the economy on that one thing. I mean, we were a little more diverse in the past, right? We had agriculture and, you know, military was of course there, but things have changed. And pretty much now it's like, we're just going for tourism all the way. And so problems like high cost of living or lack of housing, homelessness, I think a lot of those things are from Hawaii. Those are self-brought issues and problems that other states and other places around the world are also struggling with. Now, some people may say, well, these guys are coming in from all over the world, from the mainland, they're coming up and they're buying up all these properties, which makes it even harder. But let's just say that we somehow block people outside of Hawaii from buying properties, which we can't do. But let's just say we could, right? And only locals could buy properties in Hawaii. Would that change the situation for most people? Well, maybe there might be more available units for a little while, but the reality is that I think a lot of local people are going to go out and buy multiple properties, right? If condos and houses were, let's say, they're about $1 million right now for the houses, right? Or the condos about 460,000 or 70,000. Let's say they were to drop to 300,000, the condos, right? Or homes drop to, let's just say 600,000 or 500,000. There are still wealthy people, wealthy locals in Hawaii who would buy up those properties. I think you'd be surprised how many locals own multiple properties. Some are just sitting there, but a lot of them are being rented out legally and illegally. So I think even if we were to just block everybody else from buying, I still think you'd have that problem. And the problem is not necessarily stopping other people from buying. I think the issue is really in the building of the units. We just don't have a large enough supply. And even of the existing supply, some of these buildings are getting kind of old. I mean, you're talking like 30, 40 years old, and with maintenance fees that are near $1,000, I mean, that's not really that affordable, even if the cost is in the 300,000s. So all that to say, I think the problems that we experience, it's kind of our own fault. And maybe fault is not the right word, but they're here. And I don't think that people coming from the outside are having that big an impact. I think it's easy to say that though, but I don't think they're having as big an impact as maybe they really are. Which leads me to my third point. And again, as friends, right? I think a lot of the sentiment comes from just it being easier to blame other people rather than take the responsibility for ourselves. Ooh, and maybe that stings some people a little bit. And so rather than improve some of those other areas in our state, in our life, in our culture, right? It's so much easier just to blame other people. So we don't have to fix those things, right? Like education, right? We don't have to fix that. And rather than focus on trying to get kids better educated and have better local jobs that pay a lot more, which then they could have a fighting chance to maybe purchase a place. Instead, it's just easier to blame, you know, the big bad wolves coming from outside. Instead of encouraging more diversification in the economy, maybe it's easier just to blame those people that our life is so hard and miserable. And the thing is, once we're done blaming everybody else for our own problems, for our struggles, right? What does that accomplish? we're still left here struggling. It's so hard. I could blame all the problems in Hawaii, drug issues and all these other things, on outside influence and people coming here, right? That doesn't solve the problems. And so for people thinking about moving to Hawaii, I hope that they don't feel bad. You know, like, it's hard for me to see people leave, right? Like my friends and family having to go and leave. I don't like to see that. And I think it's taking away from the local culture, and I've talked about that in other videos. But I don't put the blame of that on people moving here. I'm sure by the end of the year, we'll see the population growth or decrease or whatever it is, right? And it's easy to just be like, oh, these many people moved in and that's why these people got kicked out. But I think there's so many other things that contributed to that and them leaving. And I don't know if it's just because people moving in. You know, I don't think it is. I think there's so many other things happening here in the state that have happened in the state that contribute to that. And it makes it hard, and it's making it harder. And for anyone with the courage and the guts to pick up wherever they're living on the mainland and move to Hawaii, I mean, that's tough. I did the reverse, right? I went to the mainland and I didn't know anybody, and it was hard because the culture was so different, but I figured it out and I met some great people and had a good life up there. And I think people can find that same type of life if they're moving to Hawaii, if they're from a different part of the country. Again, I think just respecting the locals, respecting local culture, trying to learn how we do things here instead of correcting how we're doing things here, I think is important. And you know what? At the end of the day, some people, they just don't like people who aren't from here. And call it what you want. You know, there's a lot of different labels for whatever that is, right? But that's just unfortunate. That's what I call it. It's unfortunate because we tout ourselves as the Aloha State, right? Welcoming and rainbows and leis and all that stuff. But I think sometimes it's conditional for some people, and that's too bad because I never thought that Aloha is conditional. I thought it was for everyone, whether you are a visitor, whether you're moving here from wherever, or whether you're just another local. But I do understand that as things get tougher, that idea of Aloha may be changing for some. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and aloha.
Hello, hello.